I can see everything. All right, we are live. Happy Monday, as I said. And today we're going to get into something that I love to talk about, which is vowels and vowel placements. And you might be like, oh, that's not such a sexy topic. But let me tell you guys that when you are a singer, you need to make your vowels your best friend. Even the most trained singers out there are things that you don't know about where you're placing your vowels that make all the difference in the world. And so notice I said vowel placement, where you're placing your vowels, because what we talk about all the time, especially when I'm coaching the singers in our intensive training program, when we're working with singers in Vocality Lab, there is a shape and a space that we resonate in. And inside that shape and space, which is our buccal cavity, which is created in terms of the boundaries of that space by our soft palate, our hard palate, the open sense of our throat, our tongue, our teeth, and our lips. The tongue and the lips and the teeth are your articulators. This might be familiar to some, maybe not familiar to others. How many of you know what your articulators are used for? Tell me in the chat. I mean, it might be kind of intuitive, but do you know? These are the parts of your body that are used to articulate consonants and vowels, okay? Now, the thing about consonants and vowels is that as singers, you sing 90% of the phrases of what you're doing is vowels. We vibrate on the vowels. And there are some consonants that we call voiced consonants that are that you can vibrate on. Voiced consonants, for example, V would be a voiced consonant. You can pitch a V versus the unvoiced equivalent is an F. It's created the same way. The F is voiced, the V is unvoiced. I'm sorry, rewind. The F is unvoiced, the V is voiced. So there are certain consonants that we do vibrate on, but for the most part, 90% of what you sing, 90% of your time is spent on the vowels. And so where those vowels live in that resonating space makes a huge difference, because either those vowels are going to be squashed, there's going to be pressure, they're going to be swallowed, they're going to be dull, they're not going to ping, they're not going to have resonance if they're placed in the wrong spot, or they're going to be like super sparkly and super pingy and super, like in the classical world, we use the word squillo, which means there's like a lot of ping and sparkle on those vowels because they're placed in the right spot. So what I want to give you today is an understanding of what the right spot is and what the wrong spot is. Okay. And so for a lot of singers who experience tension and strain while they sing. So tell me, who of you is watching? I see we've got some of you live here. Who experiences tension and strain that they feel in their throat? They feel like, do you feel, tell me in the chat, do you feel tension and strain in your throat? And that might be something that creates some vocal fatigue. That might be something that creates maybe a little bit of crackle, like a vocal fry sound. That could also be something that creates a difficulty of feeling like very hard to get into the higher aspects of your range. Hi, Kathy, I see you. Yes, you're saying me. Yes, Jackson, I see you saying yes. Okay, so if you're experiencing tension, strain, vocal fatigue, oftentimes the culprit is that the vowels are too far back and they're sitting in your throat down here instead of up between your hard palate and your soft palate and the like top of your skull. Okay, so let me give you an example of like what that sounds like. I'm going to just exaggerate for a minute. Okay, so if I was going to say, here I am, I don't know, for some reason Frozen is in my head because I don't know why. So you know that here I stand in the light of day, that here I stand. And I know I'm not in the right key. I'm just going to do it a little bit lower to exaggerate this right now. So if I put that like here between like the open space for the vowel and I put it straight back here, here I stand, here, do you hear how like those vowels are there because they're too far back? Here I stand, and it doesn't feel good and it sounds kind of like dull. It sounds kind of covered, right? Versus if I visualize the placement of the vowel, like the analogy I like to give is like a trunk that opens up. Okay, so like where the vowel was like, let me do this way, it's easier. Where the vowel was down here before, here I stand, it's like all in my throat. Okay, if I visualize my soft palate and my hard palate pulling up off of my teeth and creating and pulling the energy of the vowel up this way between my ears and up and out the top of the head. Now I'm going to put the vowel, metaphorically speaking, put the vowel, okay, like up here. Here I stand in the light of day. It's here, okay. So where we place the vowel has a huge effect on the sound and our stamina. So starting to notice, where do I feel the energy of the vowel? Like that's something that I ask the singers in our intensive training program all the time. Where do you feel the energy of that vowel? And if you're feeling the energy of the vowel in your throat, then that is where you're putting it. Versus what I want you guys to feel, sometimes in order to just get up here, you guys have to think like here, like right behind your teeth, in order to really tilt the energy of the vowel. So start to notice, do I feel the energy of the vowel down my throat, or do I feel the energy of the vowel on my hard palate? Do I feel the energy of the vowel right behind my teeth? Because where we want to feel that vowel is very much higher and more forward than you guys, most of you, are used to. Now, I'm not going to tell you to put it in the mask. And how many of you watching have had a voice teacher to tell you, put it in the mask, put it right here, put it in the mask? Anybody? Has anybody had anybody tell you that? I know you do, because I have heard teachers say that. And while I get why they're saying that, because what they want is this tilt that I was describing. They don't want it down your throat. But the problem with that is if you tell a singer to put the vowel in her mask, then what she's going to do is she's going to put it right in her nose, and we're going to get, here I stand, here. And you know why it's going right here? Because that vowel, there's no open space. That wasn't tilted. There's no open space for that vowel to go like right, like backing up into this space. And so what happens is this space is still down. Your soft palate and your hard palate are still down. And so there's no place for that vowel to go except like right into your nose, because there's no space here. So it's just going right into your nose. So we get here. What I just did is I directed the energy of the sound like a trunk opening this way, instead of directing the energy of the sound right here. Because if I direct it here, then this is not going to open, and there's no place for that vowel to bounce around. Okay. So vowel placement is super important because it really helps determine the resonance of what that is. Okay. So feeling the energy of what I call the tilt. Okay. It's a feeling of your fangs and your molars and your soft palate and your hard palate, all just like tilting up and out the top of the head, and putting the vowel up there instead of here. Now, most of the reason that people have vowels that get stuck in their throat is because they're trying to beef them up. Anybody guilty of that? Oh, I want it to sound richer. I want it to sound darker. I want it to sound bigger. Any of those things that you feel your sound is less than. And so you want to give it a little something, something. And what you do, most of you, is you put it in your throat. Here I stand. Doesn't feel good. And it's not sustainable because it's too much pressure. So vowel placement, placing that vowel up, tilted up between your ears. Here I stand. Okay. And it's the same thing if you're in head voice. Here I stand. Here. It's right up here. So here. Get out of your throat and pull the vowels up between your ears. Okay. Like if you take nothing from this training today, like that, I really want you to get that. Okay. So I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Let me see if I can address. Okay. Urbano is asking, does the placement of the vowels change according to where you're from and which language you sing? Fantastic question, Urbano. So Yes, it does change in terms of what your default is. So, for example, I've worked with a lot of Russian singers in the past, and Russian vowels and Russian language lives much more in the back of the tongue, in the back of the throat. And so, and I can't even imitate a Russian accent, but I know where it lives because there's a lot of, for just somebody who speaks Russian, like as their native tongue, the Russian language requires much more back of the tongue for, for the creation of their consonants. And so for a Russian singer, and don't get me wrong, there are fantastic Russian singers out there. They need to learn how to pull that up out of their throat and feel the energy of the sound living like right between their ears, not back down their throat. Or for example, I've worked with a lot of Korean singers, K-pop singers, and the Korean language is very front. It's all very much high, and it also can be sometimes nasal part of the sounds that are just endemic to that language, and it's beautiful language, but it's very much in the nose and it's very much in front. So for example, Korean singers need to learn a little bit more, and there are fantastic Korean singers out there, how to get up into the space that's behind here, like not just right here, but get back into that tilt. Otherwise, the vowels live here and there's no space behind it for the sound to bloom. So yes, the language, and even here's another thing, even within like the United States, we have regional dialects. So for example, I've worked with a bunch of singers over the years who are from Chicago. But if you're from Chicago, you don't say Chicago, you say Chicago. And there's that Midwestern that we have, Chicago, okay? And so again, that vowel placement is very much too much more front on those vowels. It's not it's and it's very closed. It's very squashed back in the back of the throat. So singers from Chicago need to learn how to find like a more open space to place that vowel. And so oftentimes I will say to singers from the Midwest, when we're doing like me, me, ma, and for them it's coming out me, me, ma, because that's the Chicago that they grew up with. So I will say to them, can you think AW like awesome, like me, me, ma, awesome? And when they think AW, what comes out is me, me, ma, just like a good because their normal is so that when they think AW, they just go to a normal okay? So yes, like really good question, Urbano. Like that is the language that you grew up speaking does have an effect on where you place your vowels. But for all good singing, doesn't matter what culture you come from, we want the vowels to be placed in this beautiful tilty space. The only exception to that is if you're somebody who sings sometimes like Indian classical music is a great example of this. Singers who sing Indian classical music, it's a completely different placement, and they get that traditional classical Indian sound a different way. So I would never have them like do this thing because it's not needed or wanted for the sound that that language and that music is meant for. Wait, I'm looking at some of the other questions. Okay. And by the way, guys, you feel free to put it in the chat. Goomer, what's my definition of support? Oh, Goomer, I would love to do that, but that is absolutely like its own massive topic, which I have so much content on that. And so today we're focusing on vowel placement, but because I see you in the chat, I will forward you on to some of the content on my channel that explains not just what my definition of support is, but what the definition of support is. There's not multiple definitions of support. There is one, and then there are lots of different ideas about how to access that. But I do appreciate you asking, and I will, after this, put some content in. I'll put some links for you to go check that out, because that's a can of worms that is worthwhile talking about, but not in this live for today. But I'll get that to you. Okay, so guys, the thing that I really want you to leave you with is the idea of starting to pay attention to where your vowels live. And your tongue also is a huge part of that. Is your tongue pulling back down your throat, or is your tongue nice and high and wide coming towards your hard palate, right? Because you can have, for example, an E vowel that, like I was saying, that lives down your throat. And what's creating that, what's putting the vowel down your throat is your tongue, because your tongue is the thing that creates vowels. E, e, ah. You can see my tongue moving from high on the E. E, e, ah. It's just my tongue going from super high and arched a little more down and a little more down. So knowing where your tongue is in your mouth, that's also creating where the vowel is, because I can do an E that, like I was saying before, feels stuck down my throat. And the reason it does is because my tongue making that E vowel is too far back. It's back here. Or an ah that's way back. Oh, it's like trying to sing and swallow at the same time. You can't do it. Okay, so making sure that your tongue is much more forward than you probably recognize it needs to be. E, my tongue is high and wide and coming up to my hard palate. E, and then when I go to ah, I don't pull it back down my throat. I don't go e, oh. It doesn't feel good. It's not going to sound good. Not going to be sustainable. That ah is just right below that E. Okay, so just if you've never had any training on this, like it's a huge rabbit hole that you can go down. Don't get too overwhelmed. Just start to notice where the energy of the vowels are in your inside space, in your resonating space. Do you feel pressure down your throat? Do you feel like the sound is like what we want, which is like feeling like it's like a shoot, like that energy of the vowel is like a shoot from your hard palate up and behind your eyes and right out the top of your head. And I can't do that if my tongue is pulling back down my throat. So just knowing concepts for today, that it's your tongue that creates the vowels. Where your tongue lives, it determines where that vowel is living, and where that tongue lives also helps you determine, like, are you tilting in that space? Are you pulling your soft palate up and away, up between your ears? Or are you in that place where everything's bearing down, soft palate and tongue towards your larynx? Let me see if there are other questions that I missed. So Peggy is asking, good exercises to experience vowel movement. Well, honestly, the first thing is to just notice it, Peggy, in your speech. So like if you say E, E, where's your tongue in E? E, like notice, okay, tip of my tongue is behind my bottom teeth. E, and the midpoint of my tongue is arched up onto my hard palate. E, okay, I feel that. E. Now let me do I, like mitten, right? So what happens to my tongue? How do I move my tongue when I go from E to I? The tongue goes from super arched to just like falling away from the hard palate a little more. E, I. Okay, I, E. Like just start to get acquainted in speech to feel where your tongue is, because it's the same for singing. And as you get higher in your range, that can change a little bit, especially if you're an opera singer and you need a lot more space to go above the staff. But for most of you, where you sing, the vowels are what they are when you speak. And most of you get into trouble because you try to make it something different. And so you push it down the back of your throat, or you jam it up, or all these things to try to make it something because you think, oh, it's singing, but it's not. If I say E and I sing E, it's exactly the same. Like you can watch my tongue. E, E, like don't overthink it and don't manipulate it. Just start to notice, Peggy, where your tongue is when you speak, and then use your support to start the sound. Don't need to manipulate it up here with your tongue or your jaw. So support is always part of things. Like it's always, because if somebody's not supporting their sound, then they're going to try to grab somewhere up here to start the sound. And then you're going to sabotage that normal placement of vowel that you would otherwise have. Let's see. Stephen is asking, do you raise the tip of your tongue at any point or do you keep it down? Well, Stephen, you tell me. When you say E, is the tip of your tongue up? I don't think so. Like you guys think it's like singing and you need to overthink and do it. Like listen to your question, Stephen. I know you know how to say E because you've been saying E your entire life. So just say E and notice where the tip of your tongue is. E, would you ever pull it up? No, because it would change the sound, right? So like this is I know this is like, duh, Arden, but like so many singers, you guys get yourself into trouble because you think you need to do something different. And you don't. You know how to say E. You say E the same way you sing E. E. It's no different. Okay. There are more advanced vowel techniques, to be sure, as you raise in your range, as you want to do certain diphthongs and things like that. But like for most of you right now, it's just like really starting to understand what your tongue does on certain vowels. Like notice if you say ooh, okay, so your lips are now closed, but where's your tongue? Ooh. Where do you feel it? Notice it. Ooh. E. Ooh. It's very similar. My tongue is in a very similar position on ooh than it is on E. Notice that. E. Ooh. It's very similar. Tongue is still kind of arched. It's a slightly different shape, but it's very similar. E. Ooh. Those are called closed vowels because your tongue is bisecting the space. Ah is the most open vowel because there's no tongue getting in the way of the space. And so you have a spectrum of vowels going from the most open, which is ah, and then going to the most closed. And all that is on that spectrum, your tongue slightly moving up into an arched position over time. So I. Going from e. You see how my tongue is going up, up, up like that, right? And the same thing going from to oo. In this direction, my lips are also rounding, but my tongue is also rising. So, this is kind of a little bit more didactic, right? It doesn't really matter whether you understand closed, open. I'm just giving you this information. The thing that you need to start to understand is, where is my tongue when I talk? And am I doing something different when I sing? Am I pulling it back inside my inside space? Am I grabbing? Am I doing something that's going to interrupt where the vibration wants to live? That's why vowel placement is so, 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 so important. Okay, let's see. Oh, thank you, Kathy. I wish I had these things explained to me this way. Kathy is saying that she likes the way I explain things because you guys truly, it's just anatomy. It really is. And it's also just physics when it comes to also breath support. And it's just, there's so many I don't even know if conflicting, just confusing explanations out there, whether it's because the teachers don't understand it themselves or because they weren't taught properly or because I don't know. But just like, boil it down, guys. You know how to talk. You do. You know where these vowels are. So get to know them. And then don't do it differently when you sing. That's the most important thing. And so that requires you to be present and witness what you're doing. Don't go on autopilot. Like, this is why we do tons and tons and tons of mindset work with the singers in our training program. Because if you're just like in your to-do list and whatever, you're not going to be able to notice what you're doing. So just stop and like notice, where's my tongue? What shape is it in? Am I saying it the same way that I'm singing it? And if I'm not, then get some support to understand why. All right, guys. Great topic today. Peggy's asking about exercises also. Yeah, it's like the exercises, I mean, if you really want to just do something kind of simple, you can just really notice how you move through the vowels on just a single pitch. Like, really keep it simple. You could just do like, and just move through. And don't change your support when you change pitch. If you follow my content, you know not to do that. Just start moving your tongue. And you start to notice where your tongue is. That's just a really good way of getting acquainted with things. And then go up a step. Where were we? Here, go up a step. So that's like my tongue. And then go up a step and then do it again. right? I know it's not like sexy, it's not like a fancy exercise, but you guys, most singers, they miss this like fundamental stuff, and they're doing all this, you know, fancy schmancy exercises, but their vowels aren't in the right place. So all they're doing is just like reinforcing the vowels in the inefficient spot over and over again. So all right, guys. Great questions today. Great to see you guys here. And, you know, as you're practicing this stuff, come back, comment, put it into the chat. Let's see how you're doing with it. All right, everybody? Okay, go forth. Have a wonderful week. Play with vowels, and I will see you next Monday. Bye, guys.